As in the past, you can query for samples using this screen. One thing that you'll immediately notice is that the fields that used to be located at the top of the sample tracking screen, the so-called general fields, have now been moved to a tab that is named Sample. Here we see these fields: accession number, order number, collected date and time, received date, time, sample status, and client reference. The organization information has also been moved to this tab, as well as project information. You can still query by any of the fields that are attached to the sample, such as a range of accession numbers. Here I am querying by the range of accession numbers 100 to 106. Could also query by an order number, such as 105. And you would see that only sample 16286 is attached to order number 105. I can still query by a received date and time range and or a status. Let's say I want to query for a 1 week range from June 1st at midnight using the 2 periods for a range, to June 7th at 11:59 p.m. And I want all those samples that I'm querying for to have a status of not verified. I can also query on this tab by organization information. First, I go to the type field to select what type of organization. For this query, I'm going to choose a report to organization. I'm going to query for Ag Processing Incorporated samples. And of course, I could use the wildcard if I'm not sure how to spell Ag Processing Incorporated. New to the sample tracking screen is the ability to query by any of these fields in the address information, such as apartment, street, suite number, address, city, state, zip, country, etc. Since I know there's several Ag Processing Incorporated sites, but I'm only interested in the one in Sergeant Bluff, I'm going to enter this information in the city field. Two samples meet this criteria of being reported to Ag Processing in Sergeant Bluff. I could query by other types of organizations, such as a secondary report to or a bill to. And new to this screen is the ability to query by organization ID. Let's say that I know the organization ID for my organization because I've looked it up using the organization screen. So now I'm going to query by organization ID 1180. All of these samples have a bill to organization ID 1180. I can also query by a project. In this case, I'm going to query by a DNR project 01 WQ FMM. These samples have been assigned to this project. I could also query by the description, and if I only know partial part of the description, I can use wildcards for my query. One thing which the user must keep in mind is that when querying by an organization, he or she will only receive results from the environmental and CIDWS domains. Private well results will not be returned at this time. In the future, after all the old records for private well samples have been converted and the code has been rewritten, then the user will get results from all three domains: environmental, CIDWS, and private well. In the meantime, if you want to query by organization for private well samples, you have to use the private well water sample login screen to do this. Other than the sample tab, there are three other tabs that can be used for general type queries: the sample item tab, analysis tab, and aux data tab. Using the sample item tab, I may wish to query by sample type. Let's say I want to query by dried blood spot sample type. If I expand my tree, notice that all these samples have a sample type of dried blood spot. I may also wish to query by analysis information. Let's say I want to query by a test and method. In this case, the metals multi-test. And the CDC method. I want samples analyses that are in initiated status. If I expand my tree, I see that indeed I do get samples with the metals multi-CDC test assigned in initiated status. Can also query by aux data. To query by aux data, you have to first click in the name category and either choose or begin to type in the aux item you want. In this case, I'm going to query by amount enclosed. I can select whether I want it to be reportable or not. In this case, I don't care whether it's reportable or not, so I'm going to leave this checkbox grayed out. And I must put a value in. In this case, I'm looking for an amount enclosed of $20. If I expand my results, go down to aux data, I see that indeed I do get samples that have an amount enclosed at $20. Let's say I want to query by pH. So I click in the name field on the aux data tab. Since the list doesn't take me down to the P's, I need to start entering it. Notice that there are several pH auxiliary analytes to choose from. I'm going to choose from the one in the environmental acceptance group. Instead of querying for a distinct value, I'm going to query for a range of a pH in the range of 6 to 8. Once again, I don't really care if it's reportable or not. If I expand my results, I see this one has a pH of 7.6. This one has a pH of 7.2, and so on. In addition to doing general queries using the sample item, analysis, or Oxdata tabs, the user can also limit their queries to a specific sample domain. Let's say I'm only interested in private well samples that have an owner of record. I'm using wildcard before and after the name because the owner may have the first name entered or may not. I get back one sample. I could also query in the environmental or clinical or newborn screening or CITWS domains. In the CITWS domain, I may wish to query by the PWS ID. I see that all these samples have a PWS ID that matches what I entered. If I try to query in more than one domain, I get a error message that says I can only query for one domain at a time. Well, I cannot query in more than one sample domain. I can query using a combination of fields from the general tabs and fields from one sample domain. The user can update almost any information using the sample tracking screen. The collected date and time and received date and time or client reference could be changed or information added. Report to information could be changed, or a bill to or secondary report to organization could be added. Project could be changed, or another project could be added. Results can be entered. The section assigned to perform an analysis could be changed. Units could be changed. A method can be flipped. analysis or a sample item could be moved to a different storage location. QA events can be added or modified at both the sample and analysis level. Analysis notes can be added or changed, both external and internal. Sample notes can be added or modified, both external and internal. And sample auxiliary data can be changed or added. To add an aux group, you click on the aux group button, then you pick the group you want and click OK. You can add more than one aux group. If you try to delete one of the auxiliary analytes in a group, it will delete the entire auxiliary group. The pop-out button is used to move an analysis from one sample item to another sample item. On this sample, I have two coliforms, ColAlert NPM CIDWA PM analyses on sample item 0 and none on sample item 1. So I want to move one of them to sample item 1. First I need to go into update mode. Then I click on the pop-out button. I'm going to move the second coliform ColAlert NPM CIDWA PM analysis that was assigned to sample item 0. I'm going to move it to sample item 1. So I check the second one. I want to move it to item number 1. So I check that box in the right column and I click move. I see that it has now been moved to sample item 1 and I click OK. And this move now shows up instantaneously in the sample tree. The user can also add or cancel a test using the sample tracking screen. In my example, I want to add the nitrate EPA 300.0 test to sample item 0. I go into update mode, click on sample item 0, and the add test button now becomes active. I click on it, start entering my test, and then in the drop down I choose the one I want and click OK. It has now been added to sample item 0. Likewise, I can also cancel an analysis. Let us say that on sample item 1, the coliform ColAlert NPM CIDWA PM analysis is no longer needed, or that it was added by mistake. Go in update mode, click on the analysis I want to remove. The cancel test button now becomes active. I click on it. It says a note pops up saying I may not remove a committed analysis, however I can change its status to cancel. Do you want to proceed? Yes. I see that this analysis is now in canceled status. I commit my change. There are three options available in the sample tracking screen. One of them is to view the final report. I'm going to query for release samples. Then I go to the options menu and choose View Final Report. For this sample, I get a message that says the final report for this accession number has an incorrect status, missing information, or has no analyses ready to be printed or faxed. Upon examination, I see that there was only one analysis assigned to the sample and that it was canceled. So that's the reason why I can't get a final report. If I click on another sample and choose the option View Final Report, I can move the final report around so that it is side by side with the sample tracking screen. That way I can see the analysis and sample information and results in the actual final report format. If I click on the next one and choose View Final Report again, the final report automatically refreshes. Sometimes it is necessary to unrelease a sample in order to correct sample metadata. In this example, the collector name was spelled wrong. Instead of the last name being spelled C-O-O-P-E-R, it should be spelled K-U-P-E-R. Since the sample has already been released, I need to unrelease it using that option. A message pops up telling me that unreleasing a sample will reset the release date and increment the revision number. Press OK to continue or cancel to abort. I click OK. Notice my status of my sample changed from released to completed. I also see that on the Sample tab. The sample record is now in update mode, so I can change the spelling of the last name of the collector. I must add a sample note explaining why the sample is unreleased. So I go to the Sample Note tab and add an internal note. After I'm satisfied with my internal note, I click OK. Notice that this internal note goes to the top of the queue. I preview it and then I click Commit. Notice that the sample status goes back to released.